Okay, we know that in Parshas Kiseitze, the Torah tells us Kiseitze l'macham alayvecha u'nesanu Hashem l'kecha b'yadecha v'shavisa shivya, you'll capture a captive. V'risa b'shivya eishes yifas tayar, and you'd find among her a woman, literally a eishes yifas tayar. V'chashakta ba, you'll desire her. V'lakach l'chol isha, and you will take her as a wife. Ve'vesa, and you'll bring her el toich beisecha, you'll bring her into your house. The gilches roisha, she'll cut off a hair. Vasas tipaneha, she'll grow her nail. Beisira simla shivya me'aleha. So there's a parsha of Yifas Tayar. The Gemara now comments tucked away over here in Masechta Kidushin. In a little line is the halachas of Eshes Yifas Tayar. Tan Rabbanan. 2 lines from the bottom on Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. Two lines from the bottom, Chaf Aleph Amid Beis. Tan Rabbanan. Reisa bashivya, and you will see a captive. Bisash shivya. It has to be at the time she's a captive. In other words, Rashi tells us, if initially you go ahead and purchase her as a slave, and later on you desire her, that's not the pasha of Eshes Yifas Tayar. It has to be at the time of a captive, not at a later time. It has to be, the pasha has to be at the time when she's captive. That's when it goes into effect, the whole protocol. Mashenkin, if you go ahead and buy her as a slave, and a while later say, oh, you know what? No, that doesn't work. Eishes Yifas Tayar, the word Eishes, we're dashing each word. Vafilu Eishes ish, even if she's a married woman. Yifas Tayar, what the beauty, as we're going to see, it has nothing to do with the way she looks, it has to do with your feeling towards her. That the Torah is speaking Keneged Yetzirah, and therefore what the Torah wants to do is to make something that permissible rather than something you would do and not be permissible. And the Gemara goes there and brings the following mashal, right? Mutiv sheyochlu Yisrael b'sar temusais shechutais. Better a person eat an animal that's going to die, geshachten. Now, it doesn't mean that the animal's dead and you slaughter it, because that would be halal meat. We don't do halal meat. It means that the animal's about to die. Now, if your animal's about to die, it's not the best quality of meat, so you shouldn't eat it. But however, this, it's this, you have a taiva for this lady, so better go ahead, b'di'evet shchutais, go ahead and be megaya her, and then live with her, rather than going ahead and eating tmusas nevelos, would be the comparison of her being with her when she is about a goy. Now, so v'chashakta, and you'll desire her. It depends upon your desire. As I said earlier, your fast toyar has to do with your taiva. It doesn't have to do with the physical beauty of the woman, because that's relative. Chashakta means it has to do with your desire. And if you desire her, then we have a protocol in place, because like dibutara connected with the Sahara. Ba, v'loy ba b'chaverta. Ba, her, only her and a friend. There's no twos. Only one yifas toyar, not two. V'lakachta, l'kuchin yesh l'cha ba. You're going to have to marry her, fellas. V'lakachta, l'kuchin yesh l'cha ba, right? You have l'kuchin. You have what? You have l'kuchin means this Kidushin. Ki yikach yeshisa, guys, right? Ki yikach ish, the lashon of you have to marry her. L'cha, l'isha, right? What does that mean? Yikach shtei noshim, achas loy v'achas lebanav, lach, l'isha. Good. So I think I'm reading this wrong. Ba, v'loy ba b'chaverta, right? V'lakachta. Then it says what? V'lakachta l'kuchin yesh l'cha, lach l'isha. It should be lach l'isha. It's mutter to take her right as a woman. You should take only one, and not one for you, one for your father, or achas leiv achas beno. Ve'vesa melamed. What is it? And you should bring her. Melamed shloyil chatzena. Rashi says the lashon of bia. What? Bil melchama. Look at this Rashi. This is a very, very famous Rashi, Machlokes Rashi and Tosfos, and I never understood this Rashi. I never did understand this Rashi, but Rashi, this is Rashi Shita. You should not have relations with her in war. Rather, bring her home to your house. So according to Rashi, fellas, listen to the protocol. You see a woman in battle, you have a desire for her, you have a tremendous desire for her. Bring her home, go through this whole way of making her disgusting, cutting off a hair, growing her nails long, and after all that you still desire her, then be megayer her against her will and live with her. That's Rashi. Says Tosfos. Let's see Tosfos inside. It's a long Tosfos. We won't do the whole thing. Shelo yuchatzenu b'milchama, pirish b'kuntris, lavay aleha, mashma b'toich pirushay, b'milchama asa lavay aleha kolika. That in other words, b'shas milchama, you cannot be with her. V'afilu b'yirishayna, even in the first time. Einam with the adla'acha kol ha'maisim until after everything we discussed. V'tema, im kain, my kamala, like dibutar el kanad yetzahara. Even the milchama aser ashiyav lebeisai, l'la'acha kol ha'maisim, right? Akati yiki yetzahara right b'milchama ubebeisai al yerach yamim. In other words, pashtus, to go ahead and appease the yetzahara, you would have to physically be with her. Fractisis, if you're telling me according to Rashi that there is no bia b'shas milchama only afterwards, so where is the appeasement? You haven't appeased the yetzahara, you still desire her. Through the whole process, you're going through the whole process, you still want her. Where is the appeasement of the Yetzer Hara? So go, answer bus akashis, go skip down, fellas. V'nira l'Rabbeinu Tam. But halfway through the Tosfos, the last word on the line is V'nira, and the first word is l'Rabbeinu Tam. V'nira l'Rabbeinu Tam, the bir yishonim muteris b'mulchama. When you see her in war, you can be with her right away over there. Aval bia shniya, the second time, asura achetei beisai, until she's what in your house the second time. So you have machlokas Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam is exactly what's the protocol what of an Eshes Yifas Taya. According to Rashi, it's not like you ever thought. According to Rashi, is you're going to have to go through a whole process before the first bia, but b'shas milchama not. According to Tosfos, no. Tosfos says the first bia like Dibur Yetzahara right away be mafaisi Yetzahara. And then if you still want her, then go through the whole process to be Megaya her. Tosfos goes on to explain Shitas Rashi. We will continue this. We will do what we do. We'll continue this year. Okay, so again, I think that's an important machlokes Rashi and Tosfos to know, basically, because you always have this idea in your mind exactly what Eish Shifas Torah is. According to Rashi, it's not like you ever thought. According to Rashi, it's not the normal way. Okay, now in Shemos Chaf, we have two parshas of Nirtza, fellas. One in Shemos and one in Parshas, Re'eh. So what does it say in Shemos? This is good to know because we're going to be referring to it. We had the parsha of Yiyud, okay. No, excuse me, I mixed up two things. In Begapo Yafa, Begapo Yetze, we said if he comes in alone, he goes out alone, he goes out with his guf, not his guf, machloikis, pasuk hey, vim omor yomara evet, double lashon. If the evet says, ahafti es adoini, I love my master, as ishti es bezbanai, my wife and my children, like meaning his shivcha kananes and his children born, like etzi chavshi, I do not want to go out. V'gisha adoinav el Elohim, the master will bring him to the dayan. V'gisha el hadeles, he'll bring him to the door. Gisha es hadeles, he'll bring him to the door. Oyel hamezuzah. V'rotza adoinav es oznai b'martzeya, and the master will go ahead literally and all is there with an all. V'avadei la'olam, it'll work la'olam. That's the parsha of in Parshas Mishpatim. In Parshas Rei, in Perek Tesvav, Pasik Tes Zayin, right? In Perek Tesvav, Pasik Tes Zayin, we're told, V'hoya ki yomer lecha le'etzim me'imach, I don't want to leave you. Ki ahevcha, because I love you, v'espesecha in your house, ki toiv le'imach. And in other words, this is the Torah telling what the Eved would say to him, because it's good to be with you. You will take the martzeya, and you'll put it ba'oznoi u'badeles. We said lamask means hanaka regarding giving presents, not regarding ritziyah. So those are the two parshas we have of Yifas Taya. Those are the two parshas we have. Eved Ivri being old. Says the Gemara. Tarabanan. Im Omer Yomar double lashon at sheyoymar v'yishna. He has to repeat it. He has to say it and repeat it. Okay, what does that mean? If he says at the beginning of 6 and not at the end of 6, he doesn't get all. Shnemar as we said in Parshas Shemois, right? I don't want to go out. Eitzei means it must be at the time where he's going out. It must be at the time he's going out. However, if he says at the beginning and at the end, then he doesn't get old. Shnemar im omar yomaha eved at shiyoma kashu eved. In other words, mashma at the time of the purchase when he's an eved. That's the lashon. So omar it's mashma. Literally, you'd have to say in the beginning and at the end. Mashma at the beginning when he becomes an eved and at the end, which is going to be very difficult, fellas. Why? Because at the beginning, how in the world he doesn't have right when he becomes an eved, you can't give him what a shifcha kananis. He doesn't have children yet. So he doesn't know if he loves his master yet. He hasn't worked for him yet. So it's difficult to say as soon as he becomes an Eved, oh, I want to stay here. Like, I want to stay here. It's great. So that's the problem with this Gemara. Says the Gemara, Omamar, Kenny Miller. He probably still 9 o'clock. Just 1 second. Okay, so what does it mean? Going back over the Brisa. What do you have to say? He says at the end, you need to say, I love my master, I love my wife, and you don't have it in the beginning. You say it at the end and not in the beginning. At the end, the sheish is still an eved. So what does it mean, the beginning and the end over here? So Amarava means the following. Over here, here's Kenny. It means the following. Betchila Amarava, when it means betchila sheish, means betchila pruta achroina. It means at the end of 6, guys. He's worked 6 years. At the end of 6 years, when there's still a pruta left, right? There's still a pruta worth left of his work, he has to say, Ahafti es adoni ves ishti. And that's betchila pruta achroina, the beginning of the last pruta. And what does besaif mean? Besaif pruta achroina, well, the last pruta he started, when the last pruta he started right before the end. So it means basically that he has to have a pruta left before he goes ahead and concludes his service. That's what it means. He has to say, has 2 amiris. One time, he's still an eved. There's still a pruta left. Betchila means the beginning, guys, and end means before he gets to the end of the pruta, guys. Betchila means the beginning of the pruta, and Bechila means until he gets to the end of the pruta, he has to say at that period in time. So we're redefining it. We're not saying it means the beginning of Sheish, the end of Sheish. It means at the end of Sheish. And what it means, the beginning and end, means of that pruta, be sure to get in that Yomar Eved before the pruta is used up. That's what it means. Okay. Tarabanan. So we said we saw 2 parshiyos. We saw the parsha of Mishpatim, and we saw the parsha of Re'eh. So in Parshas Re'eh, it says law, right? In Parshas Re'eh, it says, I have ki toiv loy imach. Ki toiv loy imach. We're darshaning, what does loy mean? Ki toiv loy ishu bonim. Right? Loy, he has to be married. Rabbi, let's say loy ishu bonim. If he has what children, because ki toiv loy imach means, fellas, that the adain and the slave have to be comparable. Good. The adain and the slave have to be comparable. So the following, loy ishu banim, if he has wife and children, rabbi ein ishu banim, ein anirtza, shenemar, ki ahevcha bespeisecha, okay, I love you and your house, right? And meaning your house, meaning you have wife and children. Rabbi ishu banim, if his master has ishu banim, v'loy ein ishu banim, and he does not have a shifra kanainis, Ishti refers to not his real wife, because she has nothing to do with his avdos. Ishti means the one that he wants to retain, that he will lose if he goes free. So, in other words, he has to have a shifra kanainis. If not, he can't be nirtza. Rabbi, it's a one-way relationship. He loves his master, and his master doesn't love him. Right? For him with you. With you means they have to be with you similar. They have to be the same. Rabbi, the master loves him, but he doesn't love the master. I don't know. In other words, I love you. Who chaylev Rabbi ein chayla? He's sick and his master is not sick. And in nirtza shnemar ki toiv loy imach, the toiv lashon of healthy. Rabbi chaylev ein chayla ein nirtza shnemar imach, the same. Boy Rabbi shneim chayla mai. If they're both sick, what's the din? Imach bin, and you need them to be the same with you. Vayika. Aydom ki toiv loy imach bin, and you need health. Velaka. So in other words, they're both sick, so you have they're parallel to each other. They're imach. However, they're not toiv, right, guys? Toiv means health, imach parallel. So you have the imach, but you don't have the toiv because they don't have the health. So this says the Gemara, that's it means takeover. We have to wait for Eliyahu to answer that shaila. Tanrabanon ki toiv la imach. Imach b'maichol. You have to, the Eved Ivri has to get the same food. Imach b'mishta, he has to get the same drink. Shleitei ata oichel pas nakia. You should not eat really good white bread. Vu oichel pas kibber, and he's going to eat bread that is what is. It means it's shmutzadik. It's whole wheat. They have the bran mixed into it. Ata shaisa yain yashan, you're going to drink really good wine. Vu shaisa yain chadash, and he's going to drink wine that just was made. Ata yashan al gabe muchan, you're sleeping on a good mattress, soft. Vu yashan al gabe tev, and he's sleeping on straw. Right? Mikan amru kol hakoyna eved ivri kakoyna adon la'atzmoi. Anyone who acquires an eved ivri is like koyna never to himself. We saw Taisus on Mitzvah Shabbos, fellas, right? Why the lashon of Adon? And we said, because if he only has one mattress, who's going to get it? The Eved Ivri is going to get it, right? Because it has to be Tov La'imach, and for neither to get him, it would be Midas Sedoim, not to go ahead and you do that. Referring back to Taisus on Chaf Amid Aleph, the bottom Taisus there, that we saw on Mitzvah Shabbos, right? Kol HaKoyne covered that Atzmai. So therefore, again, I'm wondering how. You always wonder, the halachas of the Torah, but I wonder how often they happen. Now, again, we see the halacha of Eved Ivri was only when Yovel was noyeg. Only because you need the ability to work la'olam until Yovel. But once Yovel was a noyeg, and that was from the time that the Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Sheva Menashe were off their nachla, according to one pshat, it wasn't like. So again, even though the halachas are here, the halachas of bondage and slavery has not been in vogue for quite a little wait, not during Chubur Bayis Sheni at all. Not during Churban Bayis Sheni at all, during the Kufa, the 420 years of Bayis Sheni at all, and even it was cut short during the Bayis Rishon. So kol hakoyne eved ivri kakoyne adon la'atzmai. Tan Rabbanon, vayetze me'imach, who ubanav imai. Now, one second. I just want to make sure what I told you is correct. When were the shift? When did they go into Galus? Sancheruv. Bayis Rishon, right? I was right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Again, this retirement, as Penny said, is affecting me already. Anyway, said the Gemara, the Yetzim Eimach, who ubanav imai. They all go out together. I'm Rabbi Shimon. Now, why are his sons going out with him? Guys, let's go through this. He has a real wife and real children. Because we said if he doesn't, then he can't get a shifra kanainis, correct? In other words, the only time you get a shifra kanainis is when you have a real wife or real children. Now, she's probably not too happy with the situation, right? Why would the master give her a shifra kanainis? To produce more slaves. So when it says over here that he goes free and the slaves go and the children go with him, clearly it's not referring to what the children he had from a shifra kanainis. It's referring to his Jewish children, correct? Yeah. So question, they were never slaves in the first place. You're telling me he goes free and they go free? They weren't slaves, right? Beautiful. Says the Gemara, says the Gemara, Amrav Shimon, imhu nimchar, banav benoisa min nimcharim. Just because he was sold into slavery, his children weren't. Mikan, you know what it means? Sherabai chayav b'mizoynos banav, right? The rabbi was mechuyev to go ahead and feed these children, right? That he, in other words, if you're going to buy an Eved Ivri, guess what? You know what? You're not just getting an Eved Ivri. You're getting the whole 9 yards. You're going to get his wife and you're going to get the kids and you're going to have to support them as well. Again, going along, kol koina Eved Ivri koina adan la'atzmai, right? Not only is it's going to cost you. Kiyotze b'dava, a similar idea, at Omer, Imbal Ishahu, it says in Shemais Chaf Aleph, Pasuk Gimel, Imbal Ishahu, V'yatsa Ishta Yimai. His wife goes out with him. Now, clearly, it's not speaking about what? The Shechva Kanaina. She's not going out. Some of Shimon, Imhu Nimchar, Ishta Nimchara. If he was sold, was his wife sold? Mikan Shirab Chayv Mizaynus Ishtai. So you have two psukim. One in Bahar, in Chafei Mem Aleph, telling me that the sons go out with him, and one in Parshas Mishpatim that the wife goes out with him. So the Gemara wants to know, why do you have to tell me both? With Tzricha. Diashmin and Bonov, that he has to support the children, Mishum D'loi B'nei Mevid and Mechal Ninu, because they're not able to work and get their own food. Avalishtoi, the Bas Mechal Me'evid he, but a wife who's capable of working and sustaining herself, Eimatavi V'teichel, let her work and eat. V'yashmin in the Kamash Malon, that what? No. Kamash Malon, that you have to feed the wife. V'yashmin and Ishta, you only tell me the wife, the reason why, the loy darchala dure, because it's not the derech for her to go door to door. It's a design for a woman to go door to door. Aval bonov the derchayul hadure, but children to go door to beg, which is normal, seems to be ema loy. I would say you don't have to support the children. Kamash malon, both wife and children have to be supported. Both wife and children have to be supported. Tanrabanan Amid base. Okay, now this is referring to the Tesvav Pasuk Tezayin. This is referring to Tesvav Tezayin and Bimidayik, the Lashon of the Torah. The Hoyakiyomer Elecha Vilakachta Pasuk Tezayin Vilakachta Es Hamartseya. You'll take the all Hamartseya. Vinasata Be'ozno. You'll put it in his ear. Ubadelas, and in the door. So it's mashma. It's in his ear, in the door. Okay. Now says the Gemara. Nema Oznoi Badeles. If it would have said Ilu Nemar, if it would have said Oznoi Badeles, not Oznoi Ubadeles. Now you wouldn't have the vav there. You just have Oznoi Badeles without the u, without the vav. What would I say? Oimer Yitgoy Kineged Oznoi Badeles, meaning you go ahead. Vinasata Oznoi Badeles. You put his ear next to the door, and then what do? You drill the door. If it would say, guys, be medayik, you put his ear badeles, and then it says you take the martseya and you drill. So you know what you're drilling? You're drilling the door. You're not drilling his ear. Yeah, okay. That's what it would be if it would say oznai badeles without the vav. Oznai bideles, agdeles. I would say yitka kineged oznai. If it would just say badeles, deles in oznoi loy, right? Mashma what? Badeles, deles in. Oh, this is the continuation of what we just said. Deles, you get the door, oznoi loy, but you won't get his ear. How could you have such a havamina, fellas? You're telling me the following: if it would say ba'ozni badeles, you would drill the what? You would drill the door and not the ear. How could you have such a havamina? But how can you say have such a havamina when if you look at Parshas Mishpatim, it says v'gisay adonav eladeles v'gisay eladeles v'rotza adonav es aznoi b'martseya. It says in Parshas Mishpatim, you're literally going to drill the ear. So how can I have a havamina just to drill the door? So you're telling me because it says ba'aznoi ubadeles, therefore it means you drill his ear, but not the door. But without the vav, you say you drill the door. You get his ear. So what does it mean? Like I said, it's mashmazir itself. I would say the following. If it wouldn't say ba'azna badelas, I'd say the following. You go ahead, and wherever you are, you drill the ear. Wherever you are, you drill the ear. Okay, that's what I would say. Then v'inichenu ala deles. Then you put him next to the door. V'yitgoy keneged asnei badeles, and keneged his ear. Right, you go ahead and drill. But in other words, he's already been drilled before the door. He's already been oiled before the door. Therefore, how do you accomplish that? Okay, tzad, you awl and you drill, right? Until you get to the door. Good? Until you get to the door. So guys, if it would have said Oznoi Badeles, I would have said the following. You drill his ear, like it says in Pashas Mishpatim. Then you put him near the door and you make another hole next to his ear. But now that it says Oznoi Badeles, it's got to be, you view this finger as the ear, this is the door, and you're drilling mamish through his ear to the door, so you know that the hole is piercing through his ear in total. Okay, that's what you know, that is is piercing through his totally. It's piercing through totally to his ear. So that's what it says. Now, delis, when it says the word delis, shameani bein akura bein shein akura. Guys, what happens if the door is not? Let's say you have Rami wine rib and you have a door in your truck. How do you know? You don't go over to the truck, put the Evid next to the door like this, lie him down, and how do you know it has to be standing? It says mezuzah. Mezuzah is right. Ma mezuzah mu'umid, af delis nami mu'umid. Just as the mezuzah is mu'umid, so to a delis is nami mu'umid. Now, I'll share with you a very interesting Pirkei Revelation that I heard. Very fascinating, fellas. For infinitum, we know women have pierced ears. I mean, my daughter, after 6 boys had a girl, the baby, the second day after she was born, if it could have pierced in the hospital, she would have pierced her ears in the hospital. I'm telling you. But I'm telling you that she wasn't, I think, a week old, she had pierced ears. It's amazing to me. What's the source of this? Says Pirkei Revelation, fascinating. Listen what he says. After the chait of the Eitz Hadas, it says Chav is punished that what? That she's going to go ahead and have kibetziv telibonim, goes through the whole kolah, and then it says v'hu yimshel bach. It says that regarding the man, that the man will be moshel over the woman. The moshel of a man over a woman is comparable to the relationship between an adain and an eved. Now, obviously, this is not for it's not making the blog for sure, and it's not something to repeat at home, but it's fascinating that that's the source. Since she was given to you as a moshel, therefore we all her ear. That the source for women having pierced ears is this inyan of Nirtza, is the parsha of Nirtza. Now, obviously, the question is, if we paskin them, if they pierce the ear down here, we paskin that you do in the top of the ear. So if you look Bisman Hazeh, many women do have piercings at the top of the ear. They really do. So it's just a fascinating, where something that, where did this start from? As a dava pasha, that women have pierced ears and men don't, which again is subject to Bisman Hazeh, right? But it's very... Okay, continues the Gemara. Very interesting. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai hoyedorishes hamikra hazeh kimin chaymer. He would dash in this like a chaymer. Rashi says, what does min chaymer mean? Sarah hamargolius is either a packet of pearls, or Sarah haboisem, a packet of spices, toli b'tzabra takshit, which people would wear as a takshit. People used to wear deodorant. They wear deodorant. They would really wear these spices. So he darshan this kimin chomer, like a packet of spices, or like, right. That's Rashi. Tosfos says the top Tosfos, Perish b'kuntres Torah magolius b'samim Rabbeinu Tam Perish chomer ma'aseh. He darshan like a story. The Chaim Perish Arach b'loshen Arvi in Aramaic, in Arabic. Kishoim lechaberei ma ma'asecha. What's your ma'aseh? Amaloi ma chamrach. So it seems to be like the derech story more. Anyway, what's the story? Let's see it inside. Why of all the things old is it the ear rather than, as Kenny said, the nose? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Oizen sheshama koili al har Sinai. The voice that heard the people, the ear that heard my voice on Har Sinai that said, B'shosher amarti kili b'nei Yisrael avodim, v'lei avodim lavodim. B'nei Yisrael are avodim to me, but they're not avodim to other avodim. In other words, you're supposed to be an Eved to Hashem. If you sell yourself into bondage, then you're going to get mad and was steal and end up being sold in slavery. So you're acquiring another Eved, to another master, not a Kadosh Baruch Hu. That he's what? He should be nirtza. Rabbi Shimon, okay, that's so. Therefore, the ear. Why dafka the ear? Because the ear is the chota over here. The ear that heard that one should not go ahead and become an evet to anyone else but a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and does. Therefore, it's all. Therefore, we make a pagam in the ear. Let's see Tosfos. Manishtana oizen yesh medrash the martzea bigamatri is dalad meos. It's 400. Ulfisha Yisrael avodim arba meos shana. Since Bnei Yisrael were supposed to, from the Bisla Ben Abisarim, were in bondage for 400 years, the Golem HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Kadosh Baruch Hu redeemed us. He threw himself back into slavery. Therefore, you get, in other words, Rashi, the Gemara explained why the ear, why the Martseya, fellas. In other words, why not? Why? We saw you could use other implements, right? We saw, according to one opinion yesterday, you can even use a thorn, but you can use a stylus. You can use any sharp implement. Why a martseya? Because martseya bigamatria is 400, and therefore we have the allusion to we were avodim for 400 years, and Hashem redeemed us, and now you're selling yourself back into slavery. A beautiful taisvis to explain not only the ear but the martseya as well. Very, very gishmak. Good, the martseya as well. Okay, continues now the other story. That was Rabbi Yochanan and Zakkai. Why the ear? Now why the door? Now why the door? Why the door? Says the Gemara. Reb Shimon Bar Reb Shimon Rabbi Hayadoirish es amikra azek min chaymer. Manishtana deles umezuzah mikol kelim shevabayis. Why all next to that? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu. Deles umezuzah, the door and the mezuzah show you eidim in Mitzrayim. They testify in Mitzrayim. When I was going ahead and skipping over the lintel, and the two doorposts, so therefore, before them, the Delos and the Mezuzah, which were Eidim, that we said that you should be only abundant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So now we have beautifully, guys, why the ear? Because the ear heard. Why the Martseya? Because the 400 years that we were in bondage and we sold ourselves again. And the Delos and Mezuzah, which were Eidim B'Sash Tzias Mitzrayim, when we went free, and now we're selling ourselves back into slavery. Very, very geschmack to explain different things. Okay. We went through how an Isha is acquired. We went through how an Evet Ivri is required. What about an Evet Kanani? What about an Evet Kanani? Now, why do we call them Evet Kananim? It's because Noach cursed them. Noach cursed Canaan. He said, "Ever avodim yile echav." So these are descendants of Cham. These are descendants of Noach's son Cham, who, according to the Gemara and Sanhedrin, did one or two things. You know, he either sodomized him or castrated him, according to the Gemara. It didn't do any good thing to him, and as a result, he cursed his youngest son. Canaan was the youngest son of Cham, and he got a kloa. So therefore, we always use the word Evet Kanaini. That's the source for the word Evet Kanaini. Why Canaan? But it's lav dafka from Canaan. It's any Evet that is not Jewish. Any Evet that is not Jewish. Now, in Vayikra Chav Hey, it says the following: Pasuk Mem Hey and Mem Vav. Pasuk Mem Hey and Mem Vav. V'gam mibnei hatoyshav magorim imachem, those who ger toyshav living with you, mehem tiknu, from them you could acquire, umi mishpachtam asher imachem asher holidu ba'artzachem v'hayu lechem la'achuza. They'll be for you an inheritance. In other words, they'll be like a stay achuza. They'll be like karka. V'snachaltam esam levnei ha'acharechem. You'll go ahead and literally you will pass them down as a yerusha to your children. L'reshes achuza lo'olam bem tavoidu. There's a mitzvah to serve ever, guys. It's asa to free every Kanaini. The Oyver and Issa to save them. It says But oilam hem ta'avodu. It's the mitzvah say they should serve you forever. And if you free them, they're not serving you forever. You should go ahead and treat them in a very, very difficult way. So this parsha, is parsha of Eved Kanani, that you could acquire them. And our Mishnah is going to discuss how you do acquire them. And along the way, I expect that many of you should ask a question. And if you feel that you don't understand the question, I will prompt you to go ahead and ask the question, okay? So therefore, it's like in yeshiva, like when the Rabbi asks you something and says, you don't know that? Versus, no, they don't know that. So go ahead and try to lead them into knowing that, correct? That's what Dov Sandberg is saying. I wish I had a Rabbi like this when I was in yeshiva.
That's for sure. I can tell you right now, I don't know that, so we can go right ahead.
Okay, I will prompt you, Dov Sandberg. Now, says the Gemara, Eved Kanani, again, an Eved Kanani descendant of, where it comes from this descendant of Chum, Nikna Bekesef with Shtaru B'chazaka, and as we're going to see later on, this is the kinyan of Karka. As I just showed you in the pasuk, they are Karka, so they are acquired the same way of Karka, and we have to see what does it mean Chazaka. Kesef Shtar are pretty obvious how they're acquired. Chazaka, what constitutes Chazaka of an Eved Kanani? The koina is, okay, here I'm prompting you with the way they go free, okay? Here's the prompt. If you had to think for a second, how would an Eved Kanani go free? Don't say anything. Don't say anything, but in your mind, picture it. What would free an Eved Kanani? I'll give you a very good hint. What did Reb Gamliel do to Tavi Avdai? What did Reb Gamliel do to Tavi Avdai? Mr. Sternberg, are you prompted yet? Oh, no? Okay, anyway, because Harold is already Harold's already, showing that he, and we know Harold didn't cheat because this art school doesn't bring this down. So I know he didn't take a gander at this. So now, says the Gemara, the koines atzmoi, how does he acquire himself? Bekesef, with silver, al yedei acherim, meaning it has to be the other people gave it directly to the master, but not to him, because he cannot acquire anything, according to Rabbi. In other words, can someone give an Eved Kanani al menas she'ein l'rabbi rishus boy? Can you give him kesef on the smach that his master does not have any rishus? Obviously, this is the opinion of Rabbi that you can't. Therefore, you'd have to give it directly to his master, not as a conduit through him. Because once he would get it, it would go to the master. He would not have his own. And shtar, you can't free him through other people, because that will be a choiv. Guys, we had a Masechta in Masechta Gittin. Guys, what happens if you give a shtar shichra to a shliach? Can you be chayzer or not? This might draw your memory. Can you be, if you give a shtar shichra to a shliach, can you go back on the deal or not? So it depends. If you hold it's a zechia to be free, then zachalad mishlei b'fanav, the shliach is zeicha, the shtar for the eved, and you can't go back on the deal. But if you hold that an eved zilei shichle pritzele in his state of avdas, he has the good life, meaning he's free to be involved in all kinds of interesting behavior, then in that case, to be out of that is a chayiv. So therefore, the only person who could accept it would be himself. That's the shita of Rav Meir in Masechta Gittin, and it repeats itself here in Masechta Kidushin. And Ushtar the Atzmai, he himself would have to accept the shtar. Divrei Rav Meir, because like Rav Meir, it's a chayiv for never to go free, and therefore we'd say ein chavan ela b'fanav. Therefore, the only way he can get free through a shtar is if you give it directly to him. So the chachamim ma'imim, the kesef al yedei atzma, the opposite apparently. The kesef al yedei atzma, meaning that you would say that you could give it to him al menas that ein l'rabbi rishus boy, that you could give it to him. Ubishtar al yedei achirim, because it's a schus to go free. Ubelvad sheyeh kesef mishel achirim. Okay, let's see Rashi in that last point. Ubelvad sheyeh kesef shel achirim. The eved ain't like klum. The eved does not have anything. The matzah mitzia a kabel matana hakol l'rabbi. If you want to be paida, it has to be other people's money. In other words, the following. Let's say the Eved is worth $1,000. He walks along the street he finds a packet, and in the packet is $1,000. And he gives it to the master, he's not free. That's not al yedei atzmo, even though he's giving the money, because as soon as he picked it up, it belongs to the master. What it means is you could give the Eved $1,000 because the Eved has a capacity, al manas le'in rabbi shusbay. Then he can give it to him. Al yedei atzmo. So you have basically two machloikas in over here. One, does it ever have a capacity to receive something without the permission of the master? Says Reb Meir, no. Says the Chachamim, yes. And the second, is it a schus for an evet to go free or not? According to Reb Meir, no, it's a chayiv. According to the Chachamim, it's yes. And therefore, if you would give a shtar shikra to a shliach and say, bring it to my evet, there's no backseats. You can't go back. Okay. What's the question I want you to ask? It says, "V'koina al yedei atzmai," right? Rabbi Roses, why you got it? Share it with the Olam.
Shane va'ayin.
Shane va'ayin. He spoke out that an Evid Kenani goes out, Shane va'ayin. Like Seitzei could say Sa'avadim. The Amma doesn't go out like other Avadim. You go in like it, but you don't go out like it. So l'chayra, why did the Mishnah mention Shane va'ayin? But we said 24 Rashi Evarim, correct? Not only Shein va'ayin, fingers. So l'chayra, why didn't mention that as well? So I share with you a beautiful ritva. Says the ritva, Hikshu b'taisvis, Amayloi ketani nami shekoina atzmai b'rashe evarim v'tirtzu mishum davlei kanasa. It's a kanas. In other words, since you harmed him, it's a kanas that you have to free him. U'b'kanasa loy kamari. The boy moida mifter. If he wanted, he could be moida. He could admit what he did in mifter. V'acherim tirtzu other like tani ela mashiyesh l'chalik bein alidei atzma ben alidei acherim kigon kesef u'shtar. In other words, we have machlokes by kesef u'shtar between Rabbi and the Chachamim, and we want to bring in that machlokes. Masha enkein Rashi Evarim, everyone would agree. So two pshatim. We're not speaking about knas, or we only want to say koines atzmai where there's a machlokes and there's no machlokes by Rashi Evarim. I like this pshat. Ubi Yushalmi tirtzu be'inyan yafa. Obviously, Ritva also liked it. Be'inyan yafa. Ritva gives it a haskama. Sha'amru sham v'lama loy taninan shekoina atzmai b'Rashi Evarim she'ena chaysim. That once these things you cut off, they don't come back. Am Rabbi Yochanan mifnei machlokes is tani tzarich get shichrar. Even after you go ahead and cut off that aver, nonetheless, or not got the tooth, they would still need to get shikra, according to one Amar. This tani ain't a tzarich get shikra, that you don't need anything. Automatically you go free. Al kain klaimar, the key when the ikka man the savar, the ma'uk the adkan. Klaimar, the key when the ikka man the savar, the ma'ukiv get shikra, like tani lahacha, like a tani al drachim shekoines atzmai, behem legamri, vein it tzarich get shikra. That Tamnachain is correct. So in other words, when it says in our Mishnah, v'koines atzmai, the two ways, it says b'kesef u'b'shtar shichror, meaning that's the final way. That's it. Once that happens, there's nothing more that needs to be done. They're free. Kesef, gone. Shtar, gone. Rashi Evarim, there's a mandam who says even after Rashi Evarim, you would need a second, besides that, you would need to get shikra. That we did learn. So you have a few ways of explaining this as knas or machlekes, or we want to say a third way, the Yerushalmi, that the Ritva likes very much, is that we learned the end game. We learned kesef and shtar, which they themselves are the end game, versus Rashi Evarim, which according to one opinion is not the end game, because according to one opinion, you would have to go ahead and give, even after Rashi Evarim, you would have to give a shtar shukha afterwards. Very beautiful. Beautiful teretz to a very obvious kasha. Says the Gemara. It says kesef minolon. How do you know that an Eved Kanani goes out with kesef? It says you should bequeath them to your children after you. L'reishas achuza. Hekeshna kasav l'stei achuza. The Gemara goes there, the pasuk, the Torah compares an Eved Kanani to stei achuza. Mastei achuza nikna b'kesef b'shtar b'chazaka, as we're going to see. Af Eved Kanani nikna b'kesef b'shtar b'chazaka. I'll ask, imastei achuza chayzeres l'baylam b'yovel. Af Eved Kanani Chayzel LeBailam B'Yovel, the Baal here would be himself. We know the stay achuza. We know you're telling me how it goes in. How about the way it goes out? Comes Yovel, it goes back to its original owner. So maybe Yovel, you have to free the slave. It says Gemara Talmud Laimar Lo Olam Behem Tavaydu. It says Lo Olam Behem Tavaydu, and therefore they serve forever. Hi guys, how do you mean Lo Olam means Yovel, guys? Maybe Lo Olam means Yovel. Rashi, Tosfos. Talmud Laimar Lo Olam. Third Tosfos down. Ve'im Laimar Lo Olam Shel Yovel. Dem Kain Lishlei Kraminei V'Neiluf Mistei Achuza. Fellas, watch, beautiful. When does the stay achuza go back? It goes back b'yovel. You know that is a given. So now, you said that an Eved Kanani is mukish to stay achuza, correct? Stay achuza, keser shtar b'chazaka, Eved Kanani, keser shtar b'chazaka. Yovel. So if an Eved Kanani would go out in Yovel, you wouldn't have to say ba'olam lehem ta'avaydu. You would know, if Yovel means Yovel, you wouldn't have to say ba'olam and ta'avaydu. That would be obvious, correct? You'd know Yovel. It must be la'olam means taka la'olam forever and not yovel. Even though by Eved Ivri la'olam meant la'olam shel yovel. By Eved Ivri it meant, guys, a nirtza never serves beyond yovel. La'olam means up until yovel, correct? So the Gemara wants to know maybe la'olam here also means yovel. Says the Gemara, no, la'olam by Eved Kanani cannot mean yovel, because if it did, you wouldn't have to say it at all. I would know it from the hekesh to stay achuza. Why does it say it la'olam? Because the taka means la'olam. It doesn't mean the la'olam by Eved Kanani is not the olam by Eved Ivri. The olam by Eved Ivri is yovel. The olam by Eved Kanani is what is forever, taka forever. Again, a page that you have to do every single thesis on. Very interesting, you know. You don't have to, but it reads well. Tana. Af b'chalipin. You can even acquire an Evet Kanani b'chalipin. Okay? The Tana Didon, Atana, Olabadi Sekesh Shtar Chazaka, why didn't it include chalipin? Milsa, the lesser b'metaltalin, something that doesn't exist b'metaltalin, Ketani. Milsa, something that's lesser, right? Kesef Shtar Chazaka, Kesef, again, we're going to get to Machloikas between Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan regarding Kesef, but we know when we speak about metaltalin, we speak about Mashicha, Mesira, Hagbah. So we're learning the kinyanim that don't exist by metatlin. Milsa the ism metatlin like katani. Chalipin, which exists by metatlin, we're not learning. So we didn't learn chalipin here because since we learned chalipin by metatlin, we didn't learn it by here. Amashmuel, Eved Kanani nikta b'mashicha. An Eved Kanani can be required in mashicha. Says Shmuel, aside from the kinyanim of keser shtar chazaka, which are kinyan karka, you could acquire an Evet Kanani using the kinyan of metaltalin, which is Mashicha, which is pulling him into your Rishus. Ketzad, why would pulling be by an Evet Kanani? Takvai, you grab him. Upa etzlai. Kanu, you acquire him. Kara, if you call him, Uba etzlai, and he comes to you, like Kana, then you won't. In other words, that's not considered Mashicha. If you call him and he listens to your words and he comes, that's not Mashiach, he wouldn't be yours. Bishleim Latanadi Don. So Frag Gemara, why didn't you learn Mashiach? Bishleim Latanadi Don, most of this is Metatlin Katani, the less than Metatlin Katani. Good? So in other words, we gave a teretz. You know why we don't include Chalipin? Because it's something that's Metatlin. You know why we don't include Mashiach? Because it is Metatlin, correct? So therefore it's not included. But the Tana of the Brisa that learned Chalipin, why did he just learn Keser Shtar Chazaka v'Chalipin? He should have said Kesev Shtar Chazaka u'Mashicha. That's the second brisa. Elatana Bara, the one of Chalipin, Nisni Mashicha. Let him go ahead and learn Mashicha. Kikatani Milsa the Isra Bein b'Mekarka Bein b'Metatal. Mashicha the Metatalin b'Karka loy lesa like Katani. Here's a good teretz. The one of the brisa who learned Chalipin, he learned something that is by both kesef shtar chazaka, right? Something that is that bein bekarka bein metatalin. In other words, he would hold that kesef shtar and chazaka would help by metatalin as well, as Mashicha would help, but Mashicha would not help by karka. So therefore, chalipin, which helps by sai metatalin, sai karka, is learned. Mashicha, which only helps by metaltalin, but not by karka, because it's not shaykh Mashiach by karka, we don't learn. Ketzad, we said, well, how do you do Mashiach by an Eved? Takva, you grab him, and he comes to you, Kana, you acquire him. However, Karu Ba'etzla, if you call him and he comes to you, like honey, then you don't acquire him. Says the Gemara, v'karu loy, if you call something, you're making a kinyan and you call it, it doesn't work. Vatanya, ketza b'mesira, you're being acquiring an animal, guys. You're acquiring an animal. Ketza b'mesira, achuz b'talfo, you grab onto its hoof, b'sara or its hair, ba'oikiv she'alaha, the saddle on its back, b'shlif she'alaha, the bag that's on it, b'prumbiya shebepia, the bit in its mouth, ubezuk shebetzabara, or the bell around its neck, kana. So this is the kinyan of a behema gasa, a big animal. So you acquire it by mesira. He's giving over something. So you're not pulling it. It's literally giving over the reins, giving over mamish literally giving over the reins. That's by an animal. Ketza b'meshicha. How would you acquire an animal b'meshicha? Kairala, you call it v'hiba, and it comes to you. Oyhekisha b'makel, you hit it with a stick. V'ratz the lefanav, and it runs in front of you. Ki meshach yad v'regel, doesn't need to run mamish. Once it picks up its front foot and its back foot, kana. It's not enough the hand and a back foot and a front foot. It has to move the length of itself. What's the bottom line? You see that by acquiring a behema, you could acquire the animal with calling the animal. So why by an eved, if you call him, it's not considered meshicha. By an animal, calling the animal moving is considered meshicha. Masha'inka by a human being kind of what? Being kind of a person, that calling doesn't help. What's the difference? It says, when a behema goes, it's going the das of the mara. This animal's not moving. You know why the animal is moving? The animal is moving is because the master made it move. By the master saying, Fido, come here, Elsie, come here. It's talking about behema gasa. Elsie, come here, Dumbo, come here. You're speaking about what a large animal. Go, come here. So come here. So Mamela, it's coming because of you. That's the kinyan. Eved, Adati the nafshe kosa. But the Eved, you call him, but you know why he's moving? Because of himself. So that's not a kinyan. Where you pull the Eved?
Laser did it at 9:30 today.
Eved, where you going?
Yeah, okay.
Where you go ahead and you're moving him, then you acquire him. Because you're doing it. But you call him and he's doing it, then you're not acquiring him. Rav Ashi, Eved Katan Kibehema Dami. Therefore, a small Eved who is listening to you and only you is similar to an animal, and you will be able to acquire him with Kriya, by calling him. That would be the Mashiach by an Eved Katan. So there is a human being that you could acquire with Mashiach. What is that? If you're calling him Mashiach of calling. Tanravana. Ketzer b'chazaka. Okay, till now to the end of the daf is chazaka. Kesef shtar b'chazaka. The Gemara isn't going again. Kesef doesn't shtar. Obviously, shtar is obvious. What about chazaka? How does chazaka work? What's the act of chazaka by what? By now we had the kasha by an amivriya. Maybe an amivriya should be kind of a chazaka, right? We said, says the Gemara, Tanraban, Ketzer b'chazaka. Hit the loy b'minaloi. He takes off his shoe. Takes off the master's shoe, or he goes ahead and he carries his material, his bathroom paraphernalia to the bathhouse. If shitoi, he undresses him. If chitzoi, he goes ahead and anoints him with oil. Sachai gardoi, or he goes ahead, if chitzoi, he washes him. Sachai, he anoints him with oil. Gardoi, he goes ahead and he scratches him, or sometimes, Helbisha, he dresses him. Hiniloi, he puts on his shoe. And the Eved picks up the one who buys him, he picks him up in a way that's showing Avdus. So all this would be Chazaka. In other words, when he does the actions of an Eved, that would be Chazaka. On Reb Shimon, like hey Chazaka Gedolah miHagba. Chazaka should not be greater than Hagba. Right? Shagba koinem mikol makom. My kamar. What exactly is he saying? Rashi says right away, my kamar. We're still still about 5 lines up. Ma'in hagbod the alma lagbod the hacha. Hagbod the alma lokeach magbia chayfetz. The lokeach, the one who's buying it, is picking up the chayfetz. The hacha mina she'evid magbiu mishum avoida shelokeach mishavi by liknes bechazaka. Fellas, when we speak about kinyan hagbah, what do we mean? So let's say I'm selling you this iPhone, correct? So I'm selling you. Someone's selling me this iPhone. So I, the lokeach, pick up the iPhone. So it's putting in my reshus. Over here, who's picking up who? It's the Eved picking up the master. This is an act of chazaka. How do you mix up a hagbah? In other words, it's an act of lifting, but one has nothing to do with the other. By the hagbah of a material item, then it's like keach bringing this to the rishus, to the act of hagbah. Mashe enkein, where it's like keach picking up, it's more of a symbolic act of chazaka, showing he's my eved, he's being mishamish me. So my karma, what's Rabbi Shimon going ahead and mixing hagbah, which is a chazaka, to hagbah, which is a kinyan? It's a gabaldik kasha. And for the Gemara, I'll tell you what. Amar Ravashi, higbiu hu Rabbi kana. If he lifts his master, he's kana. Higbiu Rabbi loy, but if his master picks him up, loy kana. If the master would pick him up, there's no kinyan hagbah by an eved. There's no kinyan hagbah. So on those words, Amar Shimon loy te chazaka gedoyla me hagbah. It should not be better. In other words, it should work. Shagbah kind of become makon. Good. So in other words, Reb Shimon taken by itself makes no sense. Reb Shimon referring to the words of the Tana Kama before makes a lot of sense. The Tana Kama said, if he picks him up, if the Eved picks him up, he acquires him as chazaka. But if he picks up the Eved, it doesn't work. Says Reb Shimon, no. Guess what? If the Eved picks him up, it's chazaka. And if he picks up the Eved, it's hagbah, because hagbah is kind of b'chol makom, and it works. So therefore, that's what he was saying. He's saying that, in fact, that it would work. Rav Shimon, okay. Hashtu the Armenik biyahu Rabbi kana. Now you're telling me, if he lifts up the chazaka, if you lift up the master, el meyata shifa kenainis tikna bebiyah. She should be what acquired bia, because in the act of bia with him on top, she would be lifting him up. So she'd acquire him through bia. You should be able to acquire a shifa kanan. That should be a chazaka. Just like if the male picks up the master, so too the female in the act of bia is picking him up. So she'd be acquired bia. Says Gemara, ki aminon zenen v'zem mitztayer. When do we say that the chazaka works? Is with this person has hana, right? The master's having hana, he's acquiring an eved. It's zem mitztayer, and the eved is in pain. He's lifting up somebody. Hacha zenena v'zenena. Over here by the act of bia, they both have nena, so therefore it's not chazaka. But it says Gemara shloi kedarka meikla meima. What about shloi kedarka with it seems to be no hana? So Ravachi barada the minacha man lemel l'lav hana islahu the chavayu. Right, but they do have hana. Void mishka isha ksiv. It says mishka isha akesha kasav kedarka shloi kedarka, and therefore okay. So the Gemara makes a distinction between hana and zemitztai, and the reason why we don't go ahead and call bia because they both have hana. So therefore, bia would not be acquired would not be considered chazaka, because chazaka is you need a certain amount of tsar, and there's no tsar by bia. Rav Yehuda Handoa and Amaisa is Amaisa. Rav Yehuda Handoa ger. Rav Yehuda Handoa, that was from the place I guess he was a ger. She'ein lo yarshim. He was a ger she'ein lo yarshim. So if he has no yarshim, his nechasim will become hefker. So Havi Chalash, he was sick. Oil Mazutra l'shiyule Bey. Mazutra came to go ahead and be Mavaka Choyla Rav Yehuda Handoa. Chazia, Rav Mazutra saw the Takafle Alma Tuva. He saw that he was dying. Imam saw that he was dying. So Amalela Avde, so the Mazutra said to the Eved of Rav Yehuda Handoa, Shalafli Misane, take off my shoe, but Minu Lebesa, and take my shoes to my house. Good. What was he doing? He was actually doing a kinyan chazaka on this eved. He was doing a kinyan chazaka on this eved. Iked Amri Gadol Have. The eved was a gadol, and ze pirish lemisa, ze pirish lechayim. This one is pirish lemisa, right? What meaning Rav Yehuda Handoa is going to die. Ze pirish lechayim. And this Mazutra himself is Pirish L'chaim in the place. In other words, Rav Yehuda is dying, and Zeh and Mazutra Pirish L'chaim to take his place regarding this Eved. This Eved is going to be Hefker. So by doing this act of serving him, he's going to be kind of this Eved. So one says it was a Gadol, V'ikadami cotton have. The Eved was a cotton, who like Abishol and not like Abishol. But there's a Gersa changes over here. Rashi says the like Abishol, Taisus and the Rif, they say Ke Abishol. What? The Tanya, Ger Shem Mace, a ger that dies, who visibly Yisrael Nechasav, and Yisrael now, since they hefka, they come to take his Nechasim. V'hoyu ben Avodim, ben Gedolim, ben Ketanim, Kana Atzmon, and they chayrin. They acquire their own, they acquire themselves. As long as the master dies, they acquire themselves. Abishalom Gedolim Kanu Atzmon, they chayrin Ketanim. Gedolim Kana Atzmon, they chayrin. Gedolim acquire themselves, they chayrin. They're free. Ketanim Kol Maxim Zoich Behem. Ketanim, anyone who's Maxim Behem Zoich Behem. So it would appear to be like Abishol, that what by him going ahead and doing an act of kinyan on this cotton, as a result, he's going to acquire. Let's see, Rashi. Rashi is the opposite. In other words, you don't have to do it right away. According to Rashi, why is he doing it right away? He doesn't have to do it right away. You can do it afterwards. So the fact that he's doing it right away, it must be not like Abishol. It must be that he would acquire himself. So therefore, he had to act upon it right away. Because like Abishol, you wouldn't have to act upon it right away. Like Toisus and the Rif, they're saying no. Then in Ochinami, there's a kinyan in the Evet cotton, and therefore he acted upon it to do a kinyan. Okay, thank everyone for listening. Now tomorrow night